Hi there once again. I'm Jeff Smith. Great to have you with us here on Leading Edge. Property taxes have become one of the hottest political issues in the Buckeye State. Some activists want them eliminated entirely. Others argue doing so would devastate schools, police, fire departments, and other local services. Well, this week, we are hearing both sides of the debate. We begin with Curt Steiner of Ohioans to Protect Public Services. That's a coalition opposed to eliminating property taxes.
What's at stake here is $21 billion of local tax revenue that 100% stays locally, that 100% supports local services. And what one group wants to do is to wipe it all out and with no plan to replace it. And the group complains about state spending, but what they take aim at is local programs. So we're talking about schools, fire, police, EMS, senior citizens programs, parks, libraries, programs for vulnerable children, just all sorts of local programs that are paid for 100% by, in many cases, by property tax or largely by property tax. And what's being proposed is wiping it all out with no plan to replace it.
How realistic is it?
It's realistic. How realistic is a ballot issue to wipe out property taxes? It's really just a matter of whether or not the group that's sponsoring it can gather the required number of signatures. And they've had a year to do so. So far, they haven't been able to gather the required number of signatures to file. And until they do, something like this will not be before the voters.
We've seen where education costs have gone and the payouts as far as the state. I know up here in Northwest Ohio, there's been continued talk about the state system being broken as far as schools getting their money. Is there any worth to retooling any of these systems by which the state continues to dole out dollar after dollar after dollar, and local municipalities just don't have it to dole out anymore?
Yeah, I think that anything like this gets discussion started, and there's nothing wrong with discussion. That's a good thing, and certainly every jurisdiction that provides services should be able to justify what they're doing with the tax dollars they receive. So there's nothing wrong with discussion, and we also recognize that Ohioans who own homes and who have real estate are very upset with their property taxes and would like to see something done about it. This discussion leads to some of those things, and there will continue to be questions about the efficiency of local government, efficiency of schools, and whether they're spending tax dollars wisely. That's okay to have those discussions.
There aren't a lot of case studies, and I'm sure your group realizes this, where there's been a lot of talk about it around the country, but nothing that has really been implemented. So
No.
I'm curious, is there any worth at all to the possibility of finding money elsewhere for some of these entities that you've listed off? Schools being better about budgeting their money, police and fire not over levying the public.
Sure, there's a lot that can be talked about and should be. And the place to do that is in the General Assembly and other places. But the idea that you would basically look, this is like somebody saying that they don't like the healthcare system, so let's close all the hospitals. That's not a viable solution, and neither is this, to completely wipe out 2 out of every 3 tax dollars that supports local services across the state and say, let's go from there.
Have townships, have cities, have schools become too reliant? We have seen over the last 2 years, through the efforts of DOJ, through the efforts of the state government here in Ohio, to scale back all of I guess, the dollar bills that are being floated just too easily. I guess, is there too much of a reliance on tax dollars?
Well, there's certainly a heavy reliance on it, and somehow what we have to understand is that if we want police and fire protection, and we want EMS and we want local public schools, they have to be paid for. And the question is how. But the idea that you would wipe out almost all their funding just doesn't work.
When you guys hear the argument that people in this state are just overtaxed, the shift that could possibly come from getting rid of income tax, property tax, creating a higher sales tax, is there any worth in any of that discussion?
Absolutely, there is. And what people have to understand, and I'm sure they do, is that if you lower one revenue source or reduce it or eliminate it altogether, something else is going to have to come in to take its place. And that will be, in this case, the first thought would be sales taxes and income taxes. It just so happens that all the property taxes that stay local across the state are roughly equal to all of the state sales and income taxes that the state collects. So it's a big number, and you can see how much increase you'd have to offset it.
All right, stay right there. When we come back, Curt Steiner argues eliminating property taxes would create a $21 billion hole in local government funding. But supporters of major reforms say homeowners are being taxed out of their homes and that the government must find another way. Coming up next, our discussion with State Senator Rob McColley. Next. Welcome back here on Leading Edge. I'm Jeff Smith. Property taxes have quickly become one of the hottest political issues in Ohio. As we said, a grassroots movement is pushing to eliminate them altogether. But the Ramaswamy McColley ticket says its approach is different, rolling property taxes back instead. So what's the difference and what would it mean for homeowners, schools, and local governments? Here's my conversation with Ohio Senator Rob McColley.
I don't think it matters whether you're a conservative or you're liberal or you're in the middle or politically homeless. I don't think it matters at all. I think that people across Ohio are very frustrated with what's happened with property taxes. They've seen their property taxes go up in many cases, sometimes 30, 40, 50%, even in excess of 50%, depending on where you live in the state overnight. And it doesn't matter how you feel politically. That's a very bitter pill for people to swallow. And so obviously the Axe Ohio tax movement came out to completely abolish property taxes. But our approach has been one where we've certainly had conversations with folks on the abolishment side. We've certainly had many conversations with folks who are in the local government side of things that receive property taxes, including our members of law enforcement and our local government officials, and acknowledging that, look, there's a way that we could try to find a spot in the middle on this. And that's really what our campaign has sought out to do, is to talk about, look, when was the last time that people were talking about this, and the property tax increases weren't as much of a burden on people. We didn't see the decoupling of home values from any sort of reasonable indicator of inflation, and people weren't talking about it as a kitchen table issue. Our attitude is we should roll property taxes back to that point in time, where property tax growth was really a more reliable indicator of inflation. It wasn't something that people had seen the sticker shock, and roll it back to that point in time, not only to be responsive to the taxpayers first and foremost, but also to potentially preserve the system of property taxes that we have.
If that gets implemented, what does that look like for said property tax payer?
Well, the property taxpayer will see relief in their property tax bills. And for those of you who may not be aware, property taxes are paid 1 year in arrears. And so your property taxes that are coming due this year, you'll pay next year. And so our plan would be very early next year, probably as part of our executive budget proposal, we would unveil a property tax rollback that would allow for property taxes to roll back to where they were before the end of the pandemic, before we saw the massive overinflation spikes that we saw in home values here in the state, to try to be responsive to the concerns of the taxpayers across the state, many of whom are just fine voting for their school levies and have voted for many of their school levies and other levies for years, but they still see their property taxes go up 40 or 50% plus overnight. And they say, that's just simply not right. That's not how this system is supposed to work.
You talk to me about the critics who are out there who say, we're talking about the schools, the counties, the police, the townships, so on and so forth, all of those public entities that lose out on money by these plans. Now, I will also back that up with the argument that since the pandemic, some of those entities have become too reliant on those funds. So start off first with how do we make up the loss?
We are allies with our police and fire, and if we were to really have any conversations about the impact that this is going to have, and when we have those conversations, police and fire will be at the table with us. Look, 100% of property tax revenue goes to local governments. And when you see an increase in property taxes that's 40, 50, 60% overnight, that doesn't necessarily mean that the cost of running local government went up 40, 50, 60% overnight. So we would have conversations with the legislature about what we could do to minimize the impact. Certainly, this General Assembly has already done that, and some of the measures that it's taken to mute potential future increases in property taxes, but also understanding that we need to do a number of things to help local governments become more efficient.
Where does the increase come from? And I think that's one of the big questions out there is it increased sales tax? Is it because there's also been talk about getting rid of income tax?
I think it's a falsehood that if we decrease tax rates, that our revenues are going to go down. And in fact, recent history in Ohio and even in this country would indicate otherwise. During my time in the legislature, we had, just when I joined the legislature back in 2015, we had 7 income tax brackets. I believe the highest was 7.5%. We're now down to 1 flat income tax rate of 2.75%, which is the lowest in the Midwest. Yet our income tax revenues have not suffered. And actually, our sales tax revenues have gone up at a far greater rate than the rate of inflation, because it bears out that when people have more money in their pockets, they're able to do more things, they're able to spend more money, they're able to afford the basic necessities, which in turn, as far as government revenues are concerned, does generate more revenue for the government. We're not expecting local governments to bear any of this on their own. We as the state government also need to look inward and say, where is the waste and potentially fraud that has been covered lately, and potential abuse that we've seen in state governments, and try to take a fresh look at that, try to generate savings from that, and find a way to pass those savings on either to taxpayers in the form of direct tax relief, or try to pass it on in the form of other forms of assistance. And so that's going to be a lot of where this comes from. I would not anticipate a sales tax hike to pay for any of this stuff.
What is your barometer for implementing something like this? Where are you looking? Where is your case study?
We can't simply go whistling past the graveyard, so to speak. When taxpayers are frustrated, they're angry, they're disappointed the fact that their taxes have gone up in property tax side of things 40, 50% overnight. We can't just simply say, well, we can't make any changes because there's not a good case study for that. I would argue other states across the country have implemented property tax reforms to not only improve this on an ongoing forward-looking basis, but also to grant property tax relief in the near term. I believe Florida has done some of that as well. And it also really, again, I would reiterate, in the absence of us being responsive to the taxpayers and acknowledging their frustration and trying to help them make their lives more affordable here in the state of Ohio, in the absence of an effort and a strong effort to do so, there's a very real possibility that the people who want to abolish property taxes might get that on the ballot. And I would pose the same question, and I have, to many local elected officials. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer to have a system where we're trying to make reforms, we're trying to be responsive, and we are going to be responsive to the will of the taxpayers and offer them tax relief in the form of property tax reform? Or would you rather see a situation where property taxes are eliminated altogether?
All right, stay right there. When we come back, we're going to switch gears from whirlpool redevelopment to future business growth. What is the vision for Perrysburg? Perrysburg's Mayor Mark Weber joins us right after this. All right, welcome back here on Leading Edge. While much of the region's recent growth has happened in places, we've reported places like Rossford, Perrysburg Township, and Middleton Township now with the data center. The question is, what is next for Perrysburg? Well, we can talk about the whirlpool site to future development opportunities, the challenge of growing the tax base without losing the community's character, which I know is oh so important to Perrysburg Mayor Mark Weber, making his first appearance here on Leading Edge. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You and I were at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon. This has been a month and a half ago, but I said, I got to get you in because I'm fascinated by your perspective from the outside, longtime resident, member of council, and now in this driver's seat. Where do you see things differently?
It's definitely a totally different dynamic, being on this end of it. And it's been a bit of a learning curve for me in the last 6 months, but I've got an incredible staff that's really helped me through it. And I love this fact because on council, we saw a lot of what happened, but now I'm right there with all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I really love being part of it.
Yeah, one of the things, and I said it struck me as odd, was the timing of you coming in, and all of a sudden, boom, we get a new major announcement from Whirlpool Corporation that they're going into a site off of Route 25. Major investment in Perrysburg. Did that fall in your lap, or was that behind the scenes? What was going on there, Mark?
Well, I will have to say it did pretty much fall in my lap. I was, we were also very pleased. We knew something was happening, something was in the works. Wood County Economic Development had been working with someone, and they kind of tipped us off that we were going to be like a signature company here that you're going to really like, and we'll let you know more later.
Yeah.
They gave the project a code name, and that was all we knew it by. Then, as time went on, we knew they were going to. We did hear where they were going to relocate.
Yeah.
Where they were going to locate, and I was really excited about that because that building has been sitting there for at least 20 years, empty.
Let me ask you this. There's going to be, we already know there's a ton of money going into Rossford with the Amazon project, they've got a new automotive project that's happening off of Buck Road that's going to be developing here in the next few years. Those are golden goose eggs, right, for them. Are we still looking for something, because we have done so much reporting about the Perrysburg school situation, the lack of state funding, the passage of levies, the non-passage of levies. How do you move the ball forward as far as that progress is concerned in economic development sense?
We're going to work off the successes of landing Whirlpool. That happens to be right at the north edge of an area that we really want to develop into an industrial park. From that part all the way down to 5 Point Road. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we have services. Our services actually go all the way to the Dowling Road area, but we actually have infrastructure in place all the way south from that Whirlpool location. And we have a commitment from one of the property owners already that he would be very interested in rezoning and annexing. So we're looking at that, and we're discussing with other property owners. We've made some proactive moves as far as our land use plan. Mm-hmm. We're making that match our goals here. We put together a steering committee that involved a lot of the people around Perrysburg, including the property owners, to give us their input on that and let them know what our plans are there.
Let me ask you about Levis Commons. Specifically, a lot of hotel development over the course of the last 10 years, obviously. You've got some more residences that are going in. You've got shops. You've got restaurants. How much more of untapped potential is there, and what are you guys doing to eye that? Obviously, Tanger comes in, says they're buying the shopping center, the front half, but I'm talking the property, the OI land back in the back.
Oh yeah, you know what? I think when you have even this like Middleton Township has a data center, we don't have that kind of property. But I think that regional development is going to really help us all the way around, because there's a lot of cooperating entities that are going to, I think, want to spring up and with Whirlpool. Mm-hmm. And then with that, I think you got data center down south, Whirlpool on our north end of that. I think they're going to want
Mercy expanding. Taylor Automotive is moving to the corner of 25 and Roachton. Yeah.
That Route 25 corridor is our main focus right now, and we're very diligent about not allowing any more residential down that corridor. We want it to be our employment corridor.
Yeah, you said you are meeting with the schools as well and making sure that Mike Acom, the new incoming superintendent, there's an open line of communication there. Talk about that.
We've since I've been on board, we've had several meetings with the interim director, superintendent, and we've told Mike we want to continue that. And I think that's going to be real, because the city needs the schools, and the schools need the city.
Yeah.
They employ 800 people, and that's our biggest employer in the city. So we want to help them, and because let's face it, people do come to Perrysburg. They want to live in Perrysburg because of the schools.
True.
We know that. So we want to do our part to help them and really diversify that tax base, Jeff, and get, just broaden that so it's not so hard on the residents.
We've got about a minute left, Mark, and obviously this is an old-time farming community. People don't embrace change all the time, but we've seen redevelopment of the downtown. We've seen a growing farmers market. We've seen so much in the corridor of the township. And are there more cooperative moments, you think, coming between Rossford, Perrysburg Township, and maybe all boats rise at that point?
Absolutely. Jeff, when my family moved to Perrysburg, population was 5,000, and we were a bedroom community for decades, and that served us well then. But times have changed, and we've got to really concentrate on this economic development that's going to benefit everyone. And we want people to live, work, and play here in Perrysburg. Yeah. So yes, as far as with Rossford doing that,
10 seconds.
Yes, we want to.
Embrace that.
Embrace that and work with them.
Open to conversation.
We're working with our partners in the township as well.
Yeah. He doesn't go by any political affiliation because he wants to be open to all conversations.
That's right.
Mark, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll be back right after this. Once again, we hope you have enjoyed this episode of Leading Edge. If you want to reach the show with comments, ideas, suggestions, it's easy. All you need to do is send us an email. It is Leading Edge, all one word, at WTOL.com. My name is Jeff Smith. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, listen, learn, and lead.